Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, John Clark, Scott Cosenza, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. After being placed in detention hall with the school librarian, late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel made it back to homeroom. Kimmel, after making false statements about the Charlie Kirk assassination and subsequent nasty messages to Kirk's widow, somehow became the progressive left's poster boy for free speech. When did the censoring left become such paragons of the First Amendment? Do they not remember no one was allowed to make mean tweets under the last administration? Now we have congressional Democrats trying to pass something called the Nope Act. And no one better to address this latest overkill than Liberty Nation News' Scott Cosenza.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, it's no wonder that Jimmy Kimmel became a hero for free speech. It's in direct response to the Trump administration's movements against him. He had been suspended indefinitely, and that proved to be a short, indefinite suspension. Let's have a listen to what he said when he went back on the air on Tuesday, the 23rd.
Thanks to who supported our show, cared enough to do something about it, to make your voices heard so that mine could be heard. I will never forget it. And maybe, weirdly, maybe most of all, I want to thank the people who don't support my show and what I believe, but support my right to share those beliefs anyway.
It's hard for me to understand how it's debatable whether or not Kimmel's free speech rights were implicated in AB's, the broadcasters, the ones who actually hold the FCC licenses who were threatened by the Trump administration. And I agree that, you know, in your lead-in, Sarah, you mentioned how these liberals and leftists have seemingly discovered First Amendment rights. And boy, it is a welcome change for them to discover them. But also so many on the right have lost their discovery of First Amendment rights that they were so attuned to when the Biden administration was running roughshod over them. And it seems like so many feel comfortable with the Trump administration exhibiting powers that they would be apoplectic over if the Biden administration were doing the same thing. And I think
the Biden administration do the same thing, though?
Well, they didn't do exactly the same thing. They did
worse.
I think arguably much worse. But that doesn't mean that this is not an impermissible and illegal imposition on the free speech rights of Mr. Kimmel, all those who work on the show and those who broadcast the show. It's not a question of one being, you know, a level 3 violation, the other one being a level 11 violation. Those things are both true and also both violations. And for people who care about freedom and liberty, I think our position has to be everywhere and always, all the time, when a government minister tells somebody they can't say what they want to say, or else our response needs to be, that's not okay. This is a little teensy bit different because of the public spectrum that is occupied by these ABC stations. But I think really for freedom lovers, now is an opportunity for us to say, why does the public own this spectrum? Why don't we sell it off so that it can be used to its greatest effectiveness? Right now, with the spectrum, just like with any other thing that has a limited capacity, if you give the bureaucrat the power to control how it's used, then you're limited to what the bureaucrat thinks is a good idea for how it's used. And I don't think that's a good idea for broadcast spectrum or land or rivers or anything.
Well, I thought
would do a better job.
I thought the sticky wicket was the fact that he basically was repeating not correct information, or he was making it up.
There's a First Amendment right to lie.
Within bounds, New York Times Company versus Sullivan, right? And there are other bounds. And so I'm jumping in, but I actually don't want to disagree with Scott at all because I'm a big free speech guy. Though I think there are some limits, you know, like the War of the Worlds where people were committing suicide. I mean, journalists have a certain responsibility to stay within bounds. But what I would question is, I think, Scott, you suggested that what was done was illegal. And I'm not aware that, other than a comment, that the federal government took any actual action against Kimmel. His ratings were plummeting. He had offended a lot of stations, and that's where the money is. And it was a private employer's decision, not dictated by the government. And now, if that's
the threat, John Clark, is the action. The threat was issued. It hasn't been disputed. And the action was taken immediately in response to that threat. But from a First Amendment analysis, I think it's hard to, I'll stop now, but I think it's hard to suggest that there wasn't action taken.
I think it's unfortunate the comment was made, but the conclusion that the action was taken as immediate consequence ignores that there were also apparently backdoor discussions with Kimmel with the stations, and he refused to apologize. That they then fired him because he was going to double down on his vitriol, and that wasn't dictated. They weren't dictated by the federal government at all. So it's unfortunate that the Fed said anything, because that allowed it to be colored as a public stifling. But in fact, the fact that he was rehired seems to suggest that it wasn't a decision made by federal authorities, nor was ABC really concerned about that, or they wouldn't have restored him. And, meanwhile, the left, I completely agree. After the Hunter Biden laptop, after Russiagate, after Twitter, after anybody questioning the narrative on vaccines and their safety and effectiveness, we saw an incredible crushing of free speech under the Biden administration. And so now we have the liberals doing our work as conservatives, standing up for free speech. And that's why the NOPE Act is probably a good thing that we would support. And you and I might agree on that.
No.
I haven't reviewed it at full, but something that stands for the support of free speech, as you've related it, is something I think we could agree on. And I agree with you that people should be given very broad latitude. But public speakers do have a certain, or public figures, a certain maybe higher obligation to stay within bounds. And I'm not saying this was over that, but I think there are limits.
Just to be clear, LibertyNation.com is a product of One Generation Away, which is a nonprofit and does not take positions on legislation, whether it should be passed or not passed. But also, we're not blind. We're not blind and we're not disallowed our own opinions on whether it's a good idea or not. And I would just say that the First Amendment is all the legislation we need about free speech. We don't need a few congressmen to pass a law that says we really mean it. We really need to protect free speech. We just need to honor and protect free speech. The issuing legislation was in our founding, conceived in free speech, and we don't need in 2025 some new law that guarantees it. We just need people and the government to respect our free speech rights, which are already enshrined. And I would just say to you, John Clark, that the liberals are doing our work for us for protecting free speech, and the conservatives are cutting away at that work by not agreeing that if this was done on the other side, and I'm struggling to hear you say that, and I do think if the Biden administration said to Greg Gutfeld or some other conservative host, we're going to turn off the lights on you, and we're going to frustrate the licensees, which is what the threat that was made. And then, by the way, we have Donald Trump, who in the wake of his Kimmel coming back on the air, he has basically done a Truth Social post that he says they're going to basically go after them for unchecked campaign contributions is one of the ways that he can now use. He's exploring using a lever of government to punish Jimmy Kimmel. By the way, why is he punishing Jimmy Kimmel? Because of the words and ideas that Donald Trump doesn't like that Jimmy Kimmel's using. It's just as odious and just as unacceptable if it was Joe Biden or whoever was running the Biden administration when Joe Biden was napping. Either way, it's not okay. And we all need to recognize it's not okay, or we will lose our free speech rights. All right, okay. Sermon over.
I agree.
Although I'm also very much a kind of a free speech absolutist. I mean, I don't want to see anybody's speech infringed upon or curtailed or taken away in any way. I think the whole thing about the idea that Kimmel was taken off air because of the threats regarding licensing, the FCC chairman, what he said, or anything that Trump said, I don't actually think that had anything to do with it. And just to be clear, I also I agree with Scott that the government, the administration, should never be threatening a kind of a private individual in the entertainment industry or an entertainment company with some kind of repercussions because of something somebody said. Totally do not think that's correct. But I don't think Kimmel was taken off the air had anything to do with that, because really, if ABC or Disney ever wanted to nail the Trump administration, they would have called the administration's bluff, and they would have said, we're going to carry on doing exactly what we're doing. You go ahead and start pulling licenses, see how fast we take you to court. And this will become the biggest court case ever, because it will be the administration trying to defend their infringement upon First Amendment rights, and I think the Trump administration would have been crucified in court over that. So I don't think Kimmel's taken off the air had anything to do with any of those threats. It was a purely private decision. I think ABC and ABC knew that this could be really damaging for them, so they took him off the air, and then they had a few days of discussion, and then they put him back on the air. So that's my thing about it. Big free speech guy, but I think it's almost like a straw man talking about these supposed threats from the administration. Don't think they had anything to do with it, really.
Andrew, you can have the last word here.
Well, I would just say one thing that comes out of this is that I was able to dive into the ratings, and my question out of this is that why do these networks produce these late night talk shows? Colbert, Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, all those ratings are in the tank. Why do they spend money on it? There was this woman on X, she's a conservative influencer, and she pointed out that Kimmel gets 100,000 views a night on average, and she took a picture of her chili dog and said, let's see if this can get more views than a Jimmy Kimmel episode. It turned out she got 2 million impressions just by that picture of a chili dog.
As Jimmy Kimmel cemented himself as the unenviable role of the straw man for future history books, I myself hope he doesn't even warrant a footnote. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks, panel. See you next time. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.